Hi there, I'm Pete Hammond, and I'll be moderating our press conference here today with the boys in the boat. And what a terrific film this is. I have to congratulate all of you on this. And it's one of the few rowing movies I've ever seen. But so we have director and producer George Clooney right here.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Producer Grant Heslov.
Hello.
And we have three members of the cast here. Playing Coach Al Obrechtson is Joel Edgerton.
Hello, Mike.
Hi, Joel. As Joyce, we have Hadley Robinson.
Hi.
Hi. And as Joe Rance, we have Callum Turner. Hi.
Hi, Pete.
Well, George, let me start with you. Because
We have time for one more question.
I've seen a lot of sports movies, a lot of, all kinds. Rowing is not that popular among sports movies. It's kind of hard to think of movies that center around this, and
There haven't been very many. That's for
and it's a challenge too because you're working on water. You're doing all of these things that aren't that easy from a director's point of view, I think.
I just think it's not necessarily. It's a little like F1 in a way, which is you can't see speed from far back. You have to be up close, and so it doesn't look as exciting when you're watching from far away. So we had to come up with a math to make the rowing energetic and exciting, which we had to figure out. That's all.
It's so important. It's not just about rowing, obviously. It's not about that. It's about these guys, this scrappy team. They're poor. They're coming up in the Depression. They're basically doing this to stay in college. And so it's...
And eat.
And all of that, and basically survive, which is an interesting kind of theme to deal with here, as particularly in 1936, when around the time when this is set. So
yeah, it's a Depression era story, and we've seen those a lot. The truth is, Washington was such a new state, was such a new part of the world, that the idea that rowing was even on the map compared to these other sort of legacy schools.
Yeah.
And so the fun part was that these young men, out of necessity, out of hunger, out of having nothing else to do, they were lumberjacks. They got together, and it's sort of like the Beatles. You put together a group of men who actually could be good enough to win the Olympics. It's like getting, when your third best songwriter is George Harrison, it's sort of a magical group. And it's sort of what happened with these guys, was they ended up having these incredible men who worked as an incredible team.
Yeah. Had you had any experience in this?
None of us had, actually, and we turn up in February, and we get on the river, and it's snowing. And we're all in the tight shorts and freezing cold and have no skill at being in the boat. And after about 3 weeks, George and Grant come down to have a look and check in on us, and we weren't in a good place. And I could see the pain behind the smile on George's face.
That wasn't pain. That was fear.
It was, and we were worried too. But that is, we had to learn how to learn a new skill, but then also be in unison. I think that's the hardest part about rowing, is that you all have to be in complete unison. There's no hiding, and if one person is out by a millimeter, the boat suffers.
They trained all together for almost every single day for 5 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
To do this. So that's a long.
We did everything. We ate together. We went out together. We exercised together.
How did you find playing somebody from that period in this story?
I loved it. I love a period piece, and this is a really interesting time in history. These people are pretty much destitute and really struggling to make ends meet, and both of them, Joe and all of his teammates, but also Joyce, and they're all working to put food on their plates, and I loved working in this time period. I think it's like finding the hope and the light within these people, even though they're going through so much. I think it's just they have such high hopes, and they need to have light because they're in this situation. And I think probably one of the most interesting time periods to kind of delve into, even when it comes to character study. Yeah.
And Joel, another great performance from you. I love seeing coaches like this guy. He really is an interesting three-dimensional character going on here. He's not just a stereotype.
I just loved when I first talked to George and Grant about the script, you know, and read the script, that he was described as one of those coaches that I think we're all familiar with, who seems to derive zero pleasure from his job. And I always look at these coaches and think, why are you even doing this? Like, you know, coaching your way to an early grave. And I started to really realize that that behind those sort of angry, blustery red faces are often, and grimaces, are just guys who care too much. And that it reminds me of you know, the relationship between fathers and sons. Coaches are like dads to me. I had so many coaches in my illustrious failed sports sort of attempts who were just like tough dads, and I really wanted to please them. So, you know, I was really excited to play the coach and excited to not have to go through what Callum went through.
Grant, I have to ask you about the production design here, because there is a scene where the boat is finished, and it's so beautiful. I mean, these boats that you've created here, and the camera captures them, and I'm going like, whoa, these are a nice piece of work here. Did you do that from scratch, or did somebody just have these boats, or how did that?
No, we had to build all the boats. So they were, you know, the boats, those old boats are made out of wood, and they're incredibly heavy. And so these boats were made out of fiberglass to look like wood. And
But the original, the Yankee Clipper's wood.
yeah.
The original, our boat is wood.
Yeah.
So,
But we had a lot of, I mean, we had to make about 25 boats.
Wow.
You know, because
so those weren't all wood, but their boat was wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, which made it a lot harder. When
Yeah.
the rowers who we trained with got into our boat, they couldn't believe it. You know,
Really?
Yeah, because the fiberglass boats are just they're clean. You know, they zip
And the
through
oars
water.
are fiberglass too. So
Okay, so we have from Mark Eaton at Movie Realist. For Joel, Callum, and Hadley, unfortunately, the real-life counterparts to your characters have all passed on. How did you go about researching who they were, their stories, and their mannerisms? You mentioned some of that, but maybe you're creating some for the character here and dealing with it. Let me start with you, Joel, in talking about Al's story.
When I first looked at, spoke to George, and I looked at photos of Al, it was like I was staring at my grandfather, my Dutch grandfather, and not that gave me any roadmap as to how to play the characters. He would be terrible with my terrible Dutch accent. But you know, it was more about reading the book and understanding the essence of that guy, and you know, whenever I hear about actors playing really, really super famous icons, I'm always like, good luck. You know, like it's and hats off to them when they do it really well. And most people have in recent years, but someone like Al is a real guy that nobody on the street really knows about. So there's a certain, you know, amount of room to just create the coach that suits this film the best, rather than feel like, you know, his great-great-grandchildren are going to come and kick me in the shins if I don't get rid of my lisp or something.
You know, we met some family members, and they all felt that because one of the things you talked about when we first started doing it was that stoicism and how sort of silent these things were. And the family of Al that we met all said that was an element that they really appreciated because of how you.
Yeah, and it's so, you know, when you look at still photos of someone, like, it can teach you a lot. It looked to me like he had these troubled looks that were looking into the future. Like, you see his cogs turning in a picture. And so for me, it was really just about how do I relate to these boys in a way that's sort of tough love. And but no, I wasn't trying to pay homage to anything in particular, because there wasn't a wealth of information. You know, it's just a little bit beyond our reaches of recordings that we can access.
And there's so much you can take from just a single photo. And there's one photo of Joe and Joyce sitting on the ground. And I think Joe had just proposed to Joyce. I think he pretended to be picking clovers, and then he had a ring in his hand instead. And there's this look of just like pure joy, but just a little bit of mischief in there. And I'm like, oh, I want to capture that feeling. And I think, you know, Joe is he's kind of shy, and Joyce is kind of his counterpart or antithesis, which I think is pretty interesting because in life, I think I'm more of the shy one and Callum's very boisterous. So that was interesting to find together.
And Hadley's a kind of actress that you can really lean on for those kind of things. I've been lucky enough over the years to work with some young actresses sort of when they were just hitting their stride, Shailene Woodley and Anna Kendrick. And, Hadley has all of these same qualities, which is she knows exactly what's required. There isn't, like we've said, there isn't a bunch of film of Joyce talking. It was 1936, and by the time they were interviewed and talking, they were much, much older. So she had to create a lot of this, and what she took from the book, and then what she took, just whatever she figured out to make that character so whole. There's moments in this film, like when you say, I think I should tell you I love you, and he doesn't really register it, and he walks away. And there's a million ways to play that.
Yeah.
And the hardest part and the way to play it is to make it still okay, not the victim, not hurt, just like, we're gonna be okay. And then when he comes back, it pays off. And it's it's such a fine line. And when I'm sitting in the editing room, it makes life so easy when you're working with an actress of her caliber.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Thank
It's
you.
How
That
about
was the right
that, huh?
direction, though. Yeah.
Kate O'Hare of Pathos, what can this film teach to today's young people about the value of grit and determination to overcome obstacles and disappointments? Anybody? Joel, what do you think?
Well, I think you've summed it up perfectly. One of the cool things about this film, I think, is that rowing is like certain sports still quite elite and something that not everyone can access. The idea that within this story, these guys are at a school that isn't known for this, that they're really sort of up against it and that they are underdogs. And I think the idea of working hard to achieve your goal and pulling things out of yourself that you don't think you're capable of, and then beyond that doing it as a group and learning to kind of move as one and move as a family, I think says a lot. And dedicating yourself to a group. Does anyone want to add something?
Being
I'm not very
responsible, being part of a team, and not being, you're a cog in the system. You can't let other people down. You really
And I
value.
think, Pete, what you're talking about is early at the very beginning. This is kind of the truth too, which is, we've shown this movie, and it's like it's like I don't know. People are screaming and standing up in the chairs and cheering and stuff, and what you get the sense of is that, this is a very polarized time in our country. Probably, not since certainly the Civil War has it been this kind of anger. It feels like it's all the time. That's also because we see it on television and we've lost perspective. This is still the fringes. Most people in our country and around the world, most people want to get along. Most people want to live a normal life and raise their kids and do life to go well. And they want that for their neighbors as well. And so what we felt like with this film and coming out on Christmas was that it's also a film that talks about the idea that we're all in this together, and probably the only way we're going to make it out intact is with one another and in supporting one another. And the better everyone else is the better you will be. And so I liked that theme for this film.
I do too, and I think Christmas Day is a perfect time to open this movie, and that's what's happening. And hopefully everybody goes to see it. Thanks to our journalists out there. You did great, and thanks to you guys too for joining us today. Boys in the Boat's the name of the movie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Pete.
Pete.
You did great.
Thank you all.